To create this wave, I'll show you the concept and the process, and then I'll show you the step-by-step ways that you can create it. I'm using the mass family file, and I'm using a smaller scale here to create the forms. And in the View tab, I'm using thin lines so that I can see my project a little bit better. Experimenting with different ways to create this wave. If we created an extrusion of a shape that was curved on top and then created several profiles, we could create a curved surface on top, but it wouldn't have any edges that we're looking for. So experimenting with surfaces with rectangles at the bottom and maybe a spline at the top, or a spline at the bottom and a different spline at the top, led me to look at creating here a spline at the bottom and a spline at the top here, so that we could modify those surfaces. So here, if I tab to select the whole piece or form and then change it to be viewed as X-ray, you can then tab to the different surfaces. So here I'm tabbing to the bottom surface and selecting it, and then I'm going to pick Edit Profile, and by picking Edit Profile, I'll have access to those little through points or those shape handles, and tabbing through to get to one of those shape handles, I can use those arrows to modify them. If you modify it too much, then you won't be able to create that shape. You can then pick the green check mark to save that shape. Here I'm also able to tab over to the top surface and go through that same process. You can pick Edit Profile and start to modify that curved shape. And I noticed that in the one that we're trying to um, to create, we want in some cases the top to be smaller and the bottom to be wider, and some other times we want it to be wider at the top and smaller at the bottom. So this gives you the flexibility of editing both faces. And so looking at the photo there, you can see that we are starting to um, create those kind of waved portions of profiles. And so then you can start to copy these forms over and modify each one to design the type of wave that you'd like for your surface. I'm moving it a little bit closer because you could put them kind of on top of each other in some areas so that the curves blend together. Here I'm showing you that if you edit the curve at the corner by the line and try to um, use the curve piece and not the line, you'll get an error. So a better way of modifying the end pieces is to select the line and bring back the length of that line first, and then bring the curve piece to it. And so I'm tabbing to select the top profile, and now picking Edit Profile, selecting this line, and then here shortening the line and breaking here the spline to it. When you're zoomed into a view like this, if you select a surface and then orbit using your shift key held down and your wheel of your mouse, you'll have a little more control over the view in comparison to not having anything selected and trying to orbit here, it's not as easy to focus in on that one element that you can orbit around. So I'll go through the steps now of showing you how to create it. Select the bottom level so that we can draw a rectangle on that surface. Select that rectangle, use create form to create here a solid form, and then use the temporary dimensions there to make the surface only about, let's say, 2 inches or so. And then here, select the top surface by tabbing, and then pick set to set that work plane as the active work plane. Use the spline through points to create here a spline from one side to another of that top surface, and then use it again, the spline through point, to create another second side of that spline, picking points on that surface, and then use the line tool there to connect the two end pieces, the two end splines. Now we can select here the whole form, the two splines and the two ends. You may have to use the control key to select all of them, making sure that they're all on that surface and flat on that surface. And then we can creating a form from those 4 individual elements. Now we want to be able to use it to select here a solid piece, a solid form, and then using the shape handles, we can bring it down to a more comfortable here size. You can then select the top surface and pick Edit Profile, and then use the little shape handles to uh, um, modify that surface. If you select the entire form and then use X-ray view, you'll be able to see where those points are a little bit easier, and then tab to the bottom here surface and then edit that profile so that you can work with those curved forms to create the wave. I think that this form will be good for the CNC machine, but I did start to look at what would happen if we wanted to put that same wave on a curved surface. What I'm finding is that we can draw the shape on the surface, but when I create form, it wants to create a surface and not an extrusion. If I tab to the edge of this surface, I can start to modify this surface away from the original curved form, but we would still have to explore creating here either several surfaces or different ways of creating extrusions.